Hey there, friends. Welcome to Just the Gems. I'm your best friend, Brandon. It's really cold down here. Also, I need a haircut, so this kind of, It also makes my giant head seem a little bit smaller. It's got a myriad of uses, really. Anyway, lately, I've been feeling really nostalgic. I guess you could make that claim for just about any point during my 30s. I have existed in a perpetual state of nostalgia, which makes me a prime target for marketers, so... Anyway, I'm not exactly sure what's got me so particularly nostalgic lately. Maybe it's Nintendo finally releasing Game Boy games on the Switch, and me sitting down and playing the first 5 minutes of Metroid 2 and getting instantly transported back to 1990 or whenever, sitting on the couch on Christmas morning with my brand new Game Boy and my copy of Metroid 2 and having absolutely no idea what to do or where to go. It was good times. It was good times. And obviously, being the sort of person that I am, most of my favorite games from that or any era are JRPGs. The mid-90s really were sort of this apex of JRPG creation. It's just amazing the stuff that was coming out in such a small span of time back then. Now, several years ago, I wrote an article for a publication. It still technically exists. I think it was bought recently. I don't know if things are in flux. I'm not going to say the name of it, but essentially I wrote an article about why 1995 was the best year for JRPGs, period. So I wanted to take that article and drag it kicking and screaming into the 21st century by turning it into a YouTube video. Also, I figure it's not really plagiarism if you're ripping off yourself. So, won't you come along with me while we explore all of the reasons why 1995 was the best year for JRPGs?
When I was a kid, I never knew when the latest game was coming out. I often didn't even know which games were coming out, which means I was often surprised walking into Toys R Us to find they'd apparently made a sequel to Final Fantasy, or that Donkey Kong has his own video game where he's the good guy. What a world! In retrospect, the year 1995 stands out to me as one of the biggest for JRPGs, maybe the biggest of all time. I welcome your rebuttals in the comments if you think there was a better year for JRPGs. But once you take a look at these heavy hitters, I think you're going to have a hard time arguing against it. Yes, I'm intentionally antagonizing my audience. No, I don't know the first thing about audience retention or brand loyalty. Let's dive in. Okay, let me get this out of the way right up front. No, I didn't play Lunar Eternal Blue back in 1995. Are you kidding me? Who do I look like, Warren Buffett? I didn't have a Sega CD. That was squarely in rich kid territory, and I was only lucky enough to have both a Super Nintendo and a Genesis. But any conversation about the best JRPGs of 1995 can't leave out Eternal Blue. As the sequel to the original Lunar, The Silver Star, it carried on its predecessor's tradition of fantastic storytelling and exciting battles. The graphics were cute and colorful, not breaking any tremendously new ground, but pleasing in a chibi, pixely sort of way. And it had fully voiced cutscenes, which, as a 12-year-old, I think that would have done me in. Fully voiced cutscenes in a video game? What did humanity do to deserve this splendor? It was localized by Working Designs, too. I didn't know about Working Designs at the time, but later on I became a fully fledged member of the cult of Victor Ireland. Their funny and moving scripts elevated any game they got their hands on, proving that even 16-bit video games didn't need to sound stilted. Sure, some people disliked the liberties that Working Designs took, but regardless of how you might have felt about the localization itself, Lunar Eternal Blue was a big dang deal. Moving from a great localization to literally one of the worst, let's talk about Breath of Fire 2. Yes, trying to follow the dialogue in this game might occasionally drive you mad. It's sometimes so bad that you are literally given the wrong instructions on how to proceed, like a slightly more modern Castlevania 2. But if you could look past that, or play it on an emulator using a retranslation patch, then you'll find a game filled with strong characters and a dark and twisted plot that makes games like Final Fantasy IV seem childish in comparison. Not to actually put down Final Fantasy IV or any of its other JRPG contemporaries, but Breath of Fire 2 really leaned into its own darkness, featuring basically a whole darn religion to fight. And this was years before Final Fantasy Tactics made it cool. Games like Xenogears owe a lot to Breath of Fire 2 for pushing the genre forward into somewhat more taboo territory. Couple the heavy story with an excellent battle system, beautiful graphics, and great music, and you have a game that exemplifies the best of JRPGs. Yes, you read that correctly, and no, I'm not crazy. Many people for a long time would have been happy to see Secret of Evermore rot in the dustbin of video game history. After all, this was an American action RPG in the style of Secret of Mana. Who did these Yanks think they were? How are you going to top one of the best 16-bit games ever? Well, you're not. At least, Secret of Evermore doesn't. But if you don't focus on how Secret of Mana is better, then you can begin to appreciate Secret of Evermore for what it is. Secret of Evermore is an inventive game that took some interesting risks with its alchemy-based gameplay and shape-shifting dog companion. It's full of colorful and quirky characters and giant environments to explore. The story was definitely more on the lighthearted side, taking direct inspiration from old cheesy B-movies with its robots, scientific experiments gone awry, and parallel universes. Secret of Evermore isn't remembered as one of the greats, especially coming out in 1995, surrounded by such titans of JRPG history. But it's an inventive and fun game, and I think it deserves another look in 2023. I hate to sound like a hipster, but I'm just gonna say it. I was into Earthbound before it was cool. Yeah, just like today, back in 95, people were drawn to games with the flashiest graphics, and Earthbound was decidedly old school in its presentation. Its battle system used scrolling text instead of animations, for crying out loud. That was anachronistic even for the time. But Earthbound gets the last laugh. Look at a lot of the games of that era that we thought were the most revolutionary graphically. Donkey Kong Country, Star Fox, Vector Man, for crying out loud. While you can still find the charm in them, Earthbound's simple, clean pixel art style gives it a timeless quality. It could pass for a cool-looking indie game today with no issue. You play as a group of kids equipped with baseball bats and frying pans and pop guns, and you fight new age retro hippies and territorial oak trees and intelligent piles of goo to save the world from an evil monster from the future. Whew, that's a lot. Its localization was often hilarious, doing a great job of emphasizing the super weird tone that the game's creator, Shigesato Itoi, was going for. The battle system might take a bit to get used to, but its innovative rolling hit points mechanic is a unique and fun system even today. It's a masterpiece through and through. I heard its sequel is even better. It'd be nice if Nintendo would let us play it, huh? I'm gonna let a little bit of my personal bias show and just say this. Every other game on this list could have come out in a different year, and I would still call 1995 the best year for JRPGs. Why? Because Chrono Trigger. That's why. Chrono Trigger is the grand culmination of all the lessons learned by JRPG developers in the 16-bit era. Its story is layered but not overly complicated. You start out with a light, time-traveling romp that evolves into a terrifying battle for the fate of the world. The characters remain favorites of JRPG fans even today. The writing was top-notch, especially for the time. The sprite work was next level, and the music was the debut of Yasunori Mitsuda, who became my favorite video game composer before I even fully realized that was a job that people had. And it did all of that, all while eliminating random battles, something that JRPG players had complained about for years. Chrono Trigger should have been a series. If we're to believe Hironobu Sakaguchi, that was originally the plan. But fate conspired against us, and all we received was Chrono Cross 5 years later. A great game in its own right, with amazing graphics and even more amazing music, but not what I and many others really want to think of as the end of the Chrono world. Square Enix itself seems to be maybe too afraid to touch Chrono Trigger. Every time they remaster or re-release a game, like Chrono Trigger on the Nintendo DS or Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers Edition on modern consoles, I get my hopes up that now, finally, they might be ready to bring us more Chrono. I'm always disappointed. I suppose Chrono Trigger will just remain a gem floating amidst a sea of other gems back in 1995.
Oh, that's it. That's the list. I don't know if you can do better than that, but like I said, if you think I'm wrong, if you think another year has the chops to take on 1995, please let me know in the comments. I promise you, I am very open to changing my mind, but you have to convince me, so let me know down below. Thank you once again for liking the video, for subscribing, and if you wouldn't mind, would you consider sharing this channel on social media, or maybe tell a friend that likes JRPGs about it? I would really, really appreciate it. Would love to get some more people in here to, you know, join us on our JRPG journey. Is that cheesy? That's cheesy. I'm gonna leave it in. But thanks again, and until next time, bye.